Welcome to another video lecture by Utkalp Digital Classes. I am Raghav Chaturvedi and I am your tutor for the course. Today we are going to revisit Newton's laws of motion. The important topics from this chapter include Newton's laws, contact forces and accelerated bodies, friction, and non-inertial reference frame. Note that around 1 to 2 questions every year come from these chapters, and there are at least 3 to 4 questions that come in as a direct consequence of whatever you are going to read in this. So the first topic that we are going to look at is Newton's laws. The first definition that I present to you is that of momentum, which is nothing but mass into velocity. So momentum is a vector quantity which has its own components as px, py and pz, similar to my velocity having 3 components. Next, I define something known as the force. Force is a rate of change of momentum. F is equal to dp by dt, and it is equal to m dv by dt plus v dm by dt. For most of the practical purposes, in the paper, you will be using only the equation, which is a rather famous equation. F is equal to ma, where a is equal to dv by dt. Only in cases where variable mass is present in the system will you be using the entire equation for momentum, rate of change of momentum, or else in systems where the mass is constant, mass of the system is constant, you will not be requiring this. What are the cases in which the variable mass has been asked? One is the case of rocket propulsion. Or another famous question includes a cart on which some weight is kept and there is a hole in the weight and some mass is constantly flowing out as the cart is moving. Okay, so questions of these sorts will be part of the variable mass problem, but most of the times the mass will not vary in the system and you can easily use this equation. Force again is a vector quantity, so you have 3 components, max, may and maz. Now by Newton's third law says that force that one body applies on the another is equal and opposite to that it experiences from the other body. What this means is, if I have a body A and a body B, so the force that I am applying on this is equal to the force that I am getting back from B. Okay, this will be used many times in the questions or in the entire theory in general. For example, if I have a weight kept on the floor, then this weight exerts a normal reaction and gets back a normal reaction from the floor. In this normal reaction, if this is kept on earth, his normal reaction is equal to weight W. Similarly, you will have cases where there are 2 blocks like this and you are trying to push a block in this direction. What happens is, in this case also consider this contact, let this be A and this be B. So what A is doing is, A is pushing B to the right side with some contact force N, we call this N, and similarly B is pushing on the left side with the same contact force N. Okay, these are just simple examples of what is going to come later in the course, so you should remember this. The next thing that you should keep in mind is the net external force on the system can be equated to the respective forces on each of the bodies in the system. So if a system of particles, let me assume a discrete system of particles, has n number of particles, each having its own acceleration and mass, then the net external force on the system is equal to the sum of the forces on each one of them. Okay, so you should keep this in mind when you consider systems where there are more than one mass present. And let's go to the next section. So I have a question here for you. A particle moves in the xy plane under the influence of a force such that its linear momentum is given to you. The angle between the force and the momentum is. So you need to find the angle between force and momentum. In order to do questions where you need to find some angles, the dot product is the best possible way forward. So what we'll do is we'll first find what the force is. So force is nothing but dp by dt, and if you just take the value of p from here, what you will get is dp by dt, which is ak minus I cap sin kt minus j cap minus j cap into cos kt. Now what you do is you take the dot product between f and p. What you get is a square k minus sin kt cos kt plus sin kt cos kt, which is nothing but 0. Now the dot product is 0. That implies the angle is equal to 90 degree. Okay, this is one of the previous year's questions. Let's go further. Let's start the discussion on contact forces and accelerated bodies. First of all, if the net external forces on a system are 0, then my system will either be moving with a constant velocity or with 0 velocity. Okay, so there is no net acceleration in the system. Whenever there is no net acceleration, or you hear the terms such as the system is stationary or kept at rest, one of the important theorems that comes into picture is something known as the Lami's theorem, which says that if there is a body and there are three forces, coplanar forces acting on it, then we can always find a relation between them such that f1 divided by sine of the opposite angle is equal to f2 divided by sine of the opposite angle, and f3 divided by sine of the opposite angle. This will be very helpful when you are going to study system of pulleys, or you are going to study things that are hanging from threads, where one of the forces will be weight, other will be tension, or there will be a spring force here. Okay, something of this sort for any system. So you should keep this in the back of your mind to do problems quickly. Now let's consider systems where this is the case. Okay, and we'll talk a bit about forces. So there are field forces and then there are contact forces. So field forces, I'll give you some examples. Field forces, I'll call them non-contact forces. So my example are uh, magnetic force, gravitational, electrostatic force, or Lorentz force in general. And for contact forces, I have many examples. Contact forces, the examples that come to my mind are tension, normal reaction, spring force, and so on and so forth. So you should keep these two types of forces in mind before going further. And let's just discuss some of these contact forces which you will be seeing a lot in your course. So the first one is tension. Whenever a string comes into the picture, the tension force is there throughout the string. Now if the string is inextensible and massless, then you have that the tension throughout the string is the same. That is why I've shown that in both the case, on both the sides, the tension is the same. However, if the string is massive, then you should take a note that if this is my string and it has some mass, let's say m, then the tension at each point is different. Okay, it depends on how much force is being applied on the left side, for example, or left and right side. For example, the tension here will depend on whatever forces are being applied on this side and this side. Similarly, the tension here will be different. Now we use the Newton's third law to study what is happening here. Let me just draw the different forces that are there. So in the above case, I have a block with my weight acting downwards, okay, and there is a tension. So this force is applied by, I'll just write who applies what force, which is essential when you start to draw FBDs, free body diagrams, in this course. So just a basic knowledge, this string is applying this tension force on the block, okay, in the above direction. Now let me consider the string, and this is my string, okay, and it is being pulled by both the ends, okay. So there is a force of hands on string, and there is a force of block on string. And similarly, if I draw it for the string close to the hand, for example, this is the hand, okay, this is the force of string on hand, okay, each are tension forces. So what you see is, in these diagrams that I made, I've only mentioned the forces that are acting on the system in question. For example, here the system in question was block, so I said this tension is the application of string on the block. Look at the term on the block, on the string, in every force that I mentioned. This means that the free body diagrams that you are going to make will only include forces that are acting on the system. It does not matter what the system is applying, what all forces this system is applying to others, okay. With this in mind, let's go and look at the normal reaction. So normal reaction due to the surface of a block is represented here. So whenever you should remember, first of all, remember the normal reaction, like tension, is a contact force. So let me draw the normal reaction, the free body diagram for this system. What will I get? I will basically only get things that are acting on the rectangle. Okay, I need only the forces that are acting on the rectangle. So because normal reaction is a contact force, so you need to first consider how many contacts are there. There is one contact here, one here, and one here. So it will have three forces in total, which are contact forces. I am not talking about the field forces right now, only the contact forces. So I will have one force in this direction, and one in this direction, and two, and one in this direction, which is n. Okay, let's go and talk about another kind of force, which is known as the spring force. So spring force is given as minus kx. You should make a note of this force. It will come in various chapters. And what does this mean? It means that if this is my spring and this is the natural length of the spring, if I extend it by some length x, then the force will try to pull it back. And if I compress the same string by a length x, my force will try to push it outwards. Okay. Some important things that you should make a note of. First of all, if a spring is cut into two halves, okay, not halves, if spring is cut into two in the ratio m:2n, then the spring constant can be found out using these equations, okay, where L1 and L2 are these. What does this mean? Let me tell you with a very small example. Let's say my spring, like my original spring was this, okay. Now I have cut my spring into a ratio 1:1. Okay, then how do I apply these two formulas? Whenever I cut my spring into a ratio, I'll first of all try to find what my lengths are of the pieces. For example, I've cut it right in the middle. This is L1, this is L2. For the case of 1:1, what do I get? I get L1 is equal to L by 2, either using this formula or you can directly see it, and L2 is also equal to L by 2. Now you need to find the spring constant. So make a note that KL is equal to constant, where K is the spring constant, L is the total length. So you have KL is equal to K1 L1 is equal to K2 L2, where these are lengths of the broken pieces. Okay, if I just used these equations, then I can easily see that K1 turns out to be K by 2, sorry, not K by 2, twice of K. K1 turns out to be twice of K. Similarly, K2 also turns out to be twice of K. Okay, this is an important question, and this has been asked several times in the paper before, so you should just make a small note of this. The second thing that has been asked before is a combination of springs, which can be series or parallel. So I'll just erase this and I'll tell you what series and parallel means when it comes to springs. So in parallel, what do we mean? We mean that my spring, there is one spring like this, one spring like this, okay, and there can be multiple springs. It's just not two. I'm just taking an example of two, but there are two springs. They're connected to some mass here, okay. And in series, what we'll have one spring here and then another spring here connected to something, okay. So what you should remember is they are similar to the formulas for capacitors in parallel and series, okay. And this is K1, this is K2, this is K1, this is K2, okay. So the addition is similar to what we had for capacitors when you're going to study about electrostats, and this should be kept in the back of your mind when you're going for the examination, okay. So let's start with some basic exercises of free body diagrams. All the questions from this chapter include some word problem, which will then require you to make a free body diagram of the problem and then find things such as acceleration, masses, tension, then velocities, no, not velocities, but most of the times they will ask either for these three or some angle theta or something of that sort. But the basic two steps for solving any question coming from Newton's laws of motion is, first of all, making the correct free body diagram of whatever is given in the word problem. And second, using either of these two equations, either summation of Fi is equal to 0, that is the system is stationary or it's moving with a constant velocity such that there is no external force acting on it, okay, or you have summation of Fi is equal to some mass into acceleration, okay. So whether it is 0 or whether it is some constant value is the only two things that you should think about. If you get these two equations, if you get basically the equations using these two, then all your problems are done, okay. So we come to the major first part. The second part is quite easy to do. The first part is the only one that you need some concepts about, and I'm giving more focus to this because even in the later part of the course things will get a little involved. So it's okay if we take a very basic approach while going through this lecture. So let's start with blocks or sphere kept stationary on the ground. So this is my ground, okay, and let's see, I've kept a block here. Now I want to make the free body diagram of the block. How do I do this? I separate the block from everything else, okay. I've drawn the block here. Now I need to count what all field forces and contact forces are there for acting on this block. How do I do this? First, let's start with the contact forces. You need to see what all how many contacts does it have, okay. So as you can see, there is only one contact here. There is no contact here, no contact here, no contact here. So with the surface, it has only one contact. so it will have a contact force at that point. Okay, let's call that contact force the normal reaction. Okay, and next we will look at the field forces, or basically the non-contact forces. So it has a non-contact force, gravitation, acting on it. There is a force of gravity acting on it. In most of the questions here, you will often find that gravity is always acting. So the only non-contact force in most of the questions here is gravity. Later in the course, you will see that there is Lorentz force acting as well, but we'll consider that later. And now this is the first step. What was the second step? I have said that it's kept stationary on the ground, so that implies the sum of my forces is zero. Or if I just do this in the y direction, I will get W is equal to N. Note that what summation Fi is equal to 0 means is that I is basically your x comma y comma z axis, or 3, or whatever coordinate system you're choosing. Okay, so this should be kept in mind. Now let's quickly go through all the basic things and slightly move to the more advanced free body diagrams. Second one is a spring attached to an end and kept on a smooth surface. So let me draw the block here again. Okay, what all contacts does this block have? There is a contact here. Okay, there is a contact here, there is a contact here, so it has 3 contacts. There is no contact on the top, so I will have to draw 3 forces. I will draw some F here because the spring is being compressed, so there is a kx force on the right side, and there is a normal reaction from the down. Now I will look at the non-contact forces. The only non-contact force here is gravity, the gravitational attraction, so I'll just mark it as mg. Okay, so if I use summation Fi is equal to 0, okay, because it said it's kept on a smooth surface, so summation of Fi is equal to 0, that implies summation of Fx is equal to 0 and summation of Fy is equal to 0. So forces in the x direction and y direction need to be 0. I'm just telling it here once so that there is no ambiguity. So I can easily write this as F is equal to Kx and N is equal to mg. Okay, let's go to the third one, which is mass hanging by threads. So I'll just, you need to draw the for FBD of this. What will be the free body diagram? Right, let me draw this again. So you have a string here, you have a string here. Okay, so I'm not drawing the strings, I am drawing the free body diagram of this. So how many contacts does it have? It has 1 contact and 2, so there are only 2 contact forces. So because there is a string involved, so I'll call these as my tension forces. I'll call this some T2 and some tension force T1. Okay, now let me just complete this based on the diagram that is given. Okay, so this is 60 degrees and this is theta. So my 2 contact forces I have already mentioned, T1 and T2, and the only non-contact force is my weight. Okay, now I apply summation of Fx is equal to 0 and summation of Fy is equal to 0. So this gives me 2 equations. The first equation is T2 cos 60 is equal to T1 sin 60. Okay, and the second equation that I get is T1 cos theta plus T2 sin 60 is equal to 10 root 3, which is basically your weight that is given. Okay, let's move to the other one. Now this is a system of pulleys. You will be seeing a lot of pulleys in this chapter and in the chapter on work, power, energy, and many other chapters to come. So let me draw the for FBD for this and this pulley as well. So for the A block, what do you have? How many contacts does the A block have? It has only 1 contact. So I'll first make the contact force. Okay, tension. Okay. And what is the non-contact force here? It's its own weight, WA. Okay, next I'll draw it for the pulley. Now pulley is being pulled in by two contacts. There is a contact here, there is a contact here. So there are two contact forces, T and T, and there is one more force, the contact force with B. So there is a force downwards. Okay. Similarly, there is this mass B which is attached to the pulley. So there is a contact on top, which is F, and a non-contact force, its weight. Okay. Now you can easily, because everything is at rest, so you can easily just use summation of Fi is equal to 0, and that will give me three equations. T is equal to mg, F is equal to 2T, that, and F is equal to mg. Okay, where I can write this as mg and this is as mg. Okay, so the basic process is same. You separate the system, the object from the system, and then you count first of all how many contacts is it making. If it's a string, just use the tension force there. If it's a surface, use the normal reaction there. Later we'll find frictional forces as well, which are also contact forces. Okay, if there's a spring, use the spring force there. After you've made all the contact forces, then you go for the non-contact ones. So the non-contact one that will always be there most of the times will be your gravitational force. Let's look at the block wedge system. We have to make the free body diagram of this block. So how do we do this? This will be done many times in the course, so it's better that you get a hang of it. There is a contact here and there is a contact here. There is no contact here, no contact here. So there are two contact forces. Because there's a string attached, I'll mark this as my tension. And because of a surface, I'll mark this as my normal reaction. Note that normal reaction is always perpendicular to the surface. Okay. Now there is a, if this is the center, now there is a non-contact force, gravity, which is in the downwards direction. Now you can resolve either n or t depending on how you want to make your coordinate systems. So generally in sliding motions on a wedge, people tend to choose a coordinate system which is along the wedge. Okay, something like this. Okay, so what they do is they split their gravity or the gravitational attraction into two. So it becomes mg cos theta, and this becomes mg sin theta. Okay, now what they do is the simple thing, summation of Fi is equal to 0. Here my x and y axis become this. Okay, that depends on how you choose. So you get t is equal to mg sin theta and n is equal to mg cos theta. Okay, you only need to get these equations. Once you get these equations, they can give you some constants, for example mass or tension or something, and they can ask you to find one of the variables in the question. Similarly, let's see what happens for a spring string block. I have to make it for the block. So there is a contact here, there is a contact here, and there is a contact here. All the three contacts are different. So my block is here. First I'll make the tension force, then I'll make a force with the spring, let's say kx. Note the direction of kx will depend on whether you are pushing the ball in or you are pulling it apart. When you're trying to pull it apart, the spring will exert a force in the left side. If you're trying to bring it in, then the force will be on the right direction. Okay, because F is equal to negative of kx, so it's negative of the sign of displacement of your body. Okay, now you have this body and there is one third contact, so I will have a normal reaction. After the contact forces are done, I have to mention the non-contact ones. So my non-contact one is my weight. Okay, then you have the simple thing again, summation of fx is equal to 0, summation of fy is equal to 0. That implies I can easily write my equations as t cos theta is equal to kx and t sin theta is equal to mg. Okay, having done the very simple free body diagrams, let's look at one question which has come in the past. So a 70 kg man standing on a weighing machine in a 50 kg lift pulls on the rope which supports the lift as shown in the figure. Find the force with which the man should pull on the rope to keep the lift stationary. So the lift has to be kept stationary, and the weight of the man as shown by the weighing machine. So the weight of the man shown by the weighing machine is nothing but the normal reaction that is there between the man's feet and the weighing machine. Okay, so first let's consider the lift. I'll consider the lift as a square here. Okay, so what all contact forces does it have? Let me mention the contacts. So the lift has a contact with this pulley here. Okay, and it has a contact with this man standing on it. Okay, there are no other contacts in the lift. So first I'll make the contact forces for the lift. So how do I mention the one with pulley? This was my tension T. This was my tension T. Okay, and like in the previous problem, I'll go up and show you. In this problem, we found that this force was equal to 2 times T. Okay, because you had two T's on the upper direction and one F in the lower direction. When you balanced forces, you found F is equal to 2T. So this case is similar to that. So what you will have is you have a force of 2T on the top, okay, with due to the pulley. Then you have a man standing there. So sorry, you have a man standing there, so you will have a normal reaction from the man. Okay, and you will have a weight of your own. So weight is the non-contact force. Okay, now I can make this same thing for the man. I'll make it in green. So this was my lift. I'll make my man as a block again. So I separated the man from the system. Man is in contact with two places. One is this rope and one is the ground lift's floor. Okay, so due to the floor there is a contact force. So I'll call that contact force as N. Okay, and then because of its own okay, before that this is the tension on it, the second contact force, and due to its weight it has a 700 Newton gravitational force. Okay, now you do the same thing. Summation of fx is equal to 0, summation of fy is equal to 0, and you basically get the very simple equations. 500 plus n is equal to 2t and n plus t is equal to 700. Okay, let's quickly move to the next section. Now we'll consider cases of accelerated motion. Accelerated motion means the net system is moving with some acceleration a. Okay, now let's start to make the free body diagrams for this. There are two blocks A and B, and we have to make the free body diagrams for both and then try to find the equations of motion for both. So this is the simplest example that we are taking. In the examination you will get similar problems because I picked up all these free body diagrams from actual questions that have come in the paper. So if you just try to build on your tech skills to make free body diagrams quickly, then you'll be able to ace every question that is coming from it. So I have a block A, I have a block B. I'll make the free body diagrams of both. Now what is the procedure for making a free body diagram? You would first of all calculate the contact forces. So A is in contact here, here and here. So there are three contact forces for A. Now if I calculate the contact forces for B, how many contact forces will be there? But there is a contact here, there is a contact here, there is no contact here. Okay, so B has a total of 2 contacts on it and A has a total of 3 contacts on it. So for 3 contacts I will have 3 forces, which is very simple. So I have a contact force F, let me call this F. Okay, due to the ground there is some normal reaction N1. Okay, and due to this block there is some normal reaction, I'll call it as N. Then the non-contact force, which is the gravitational force, is W1. Now I think about B. B, there is a contact force from the left side, I'll call it N, because this is equal and opposite. These ends are equal and opposite by Newton's third law of motion. Okay, and then I have contact with the floor, so I'll have some N2 and then a net weight. Okay, now what this equation now tells me is this motion is nothing but this is similar to A moving with a, a force that is being up. I can assume that a net force is being applied on it and it is moving with mass of A into some acceleration of the system. Similarly, this is equivalent to B moving with mass of B and acceleration. Note that the acceleration is same for each, only the masses are changing. Okay, so this is the system. So if I try to write my equations now using summation of Fi is equal to Ma, so that implies, this basically implies summation of Fx is equal to Max and summation of Fi is equal to May. Now because only in the x direction there is some motion, so we will have May is going to 0. Okay, so my first equation for the x direction, I can get F minus N is equal to M Ax. Okay, and in the y direction I have N1 is equal to W. This is for my block A. Okay, similarly I can write an equation for block B. I've already made the free body diagram. So for the block B I get that N is equal to MBA, okay, or AX in general, and in the y direction I get N2 is equal to W2. Okay, so these are the two equations, these are the four equations that I get. Call this one, call this two. These are the only equations that you will need to proceed with this question or solve this question. Okay, let's move to another free body diagram. Now we have two blocks A and B which are connected by an inextensible and massless string. So how do you do this? First of all, you make the free body diagram of A. Let me draw it for A. So for A, how many contacts are there? There is 1, 2 and 3. So this is A. There is a force F. There is a normal reaction, let's say N1, and there is a tension. Now the non-contact force is gravity. So there is a gravitational pull. You're done with the forces, and we said that because this is moving, this is equivalent to this moving with the force mass of A into the acceleration of the entire system. Okay, all these are going to move with the same acceleration. Similarly, now I can make my FBD for my block B. My block B has one contact here, one contact here. So I have some N2 and I have a tension force. The non-contact one is this thing. Okay. So what equations will you get from this? First of all, I'll make what this equivalently means. This is MB into A. Okay. So when I go on to write the equations of motion for this, I just have to apply the same principle again. The two steps are the same for each question. So it is summation of Fx is equal to 0, summation of Fy is equal to 0. When I apply these two each, then for the first one, for the A case, I can easily write F minus T is equal to MA to A, and the second one that I can write is N1 is equal to MAG, where this is the weight. Okay. Similarly, for the second block, I can write these equations down. So I have T is equal to MBA, okay, and I have N2 is equal to MBG, okay. Let's move to another problem. This is similar to the one that we just did. So I'll not make the free body diagram for the entire thing. All you need to do is I'll not write the equations for this, those are similar. So for A, now A, as soon as I get A, I can find there are three contacts. So there will be three forces, three contact forces, and one non-contact force, gravitational pull. Similarly for B, I have a contact here, a contact here. Let's say this is T1, this is T2. For A, we made this as F, this is some N1, and this is some T1. Okay, B has contact here, and contact here. So there is a force N2. Okay, and then its own weight is there. Similarly for C, how many contacts are there? There is one contact here and one contact here. So you get a tension force, a normal reaction, and one non-contact force, which is the weight. Now for each you can write two equations. Here also you will write two equations. Here also you will write two equations based on what? Based on my summation of Fi is equal to MAI. Okay. Here there is no acceleration in the y direction, so that will go to 0. Now let's take the case in which there are two blocks A and B. Let's say one has a mass m1, one has a mass m2, m1 and m2. Okay, and there is a uniform string of mass m and length l. Okay, now what we'll do is we need to draw the free body diagram and write the equations of motion for this question as well. So what should I do? For A, let me draw it for A. I'll draw it with another pen so that more clarity is there. Okay, so I have a block A. How many contacts are there, or contact forces? There is one here, and one here. Okay, so I have F, some normal reaction from the ground, N1, and I have a non-contact force W1, and I have a tension force T1 here. Now I can make the diagram for B. Okay, my B has a contact here and here, so I have some N3, I'll call it N3. I have a tension 2. Note that this tension and this tension is not the same. Also, if I want to calculate tension here or here, all these will be different. None of these will be same. Okay, this is because the string has a mass and length of its own. Okay, so I'll just remove this. So it has a force T2 here, then it has a weight of its own. Similarly, if I draw it for the huge, sorry, not the huge one, but the string, then I have how many contacts does this string have? I'll erase these to show you. So the string has a contact here, string has a contact here, and string has a contact with the floor. So there are three contacts, so there will be at least three contact forces. This one, then there is a force to the right, T1, and there is a force to the left, T2. Okay, then it has its own weight, which I'll call as mg. Okay, W2 can also be written as let's say we can write it as mbg, and this as mag. Okay, these are very clear. Now for each you can easily write the equations of motion. Note that what this is meaning. This is meaning that A is being acted upon by a force which is equal to mass of A into the acceleration of the system. This is equivalent to B moving with MB into A, and this one the string moving with M into A. Note A is same, only the masses are varying. Okay, I can write the equations down for you, but I think it is better that they are left for exercises. Uh, so okay, I'll write one for one of the cases. I'll just write it again. So for the case of block A, I have to use what? I have to use summation of Fi is equal to mass into Ai. Okay, that implies when I apply it to block A, I'll get uh, my force minus T1 is equal to MA, and my N1 is equal to MAG. Okay, similarly you will get two equations for B, and similarly you will get two equations for C. Okay, let's move to another system. This is another system of two pulleys. Now in the previous one that we studied, both of them were at rest. Now let's assume that M2 is greater than M1. So now you need to make the free body diagram for this. uh, know that I'm only making the free body diagram and writing the equation because that is all you need to do in these questions. They can ask you for different things, but they are basically just linear equations that you can easily solve. So let me make the diagram for M1. This is my M1. There is only one contact, so there is a tension force, and then there is its own weight, okay, W1, and this is equivalent to going up with the acceleration A, okay, and a net force acting on it equal to M1 into A. Similarly for B, I can write sorry, for the mass M2 I can write there is only one contact here, so there is a tension force here. What I have made tension here. Okay, then for this mass I have a weight W2, and this is moving up with a net acceleration of A and net force of M2A. Sorry, it is moving down because M2 is said that M2 is greater than M1, so it's going down with an acceleration A and force M2A. Writing the equations for this is a simple task, so I will not be doing that. This I think you should make a note of, that if a pulley system is shown to you like this, and you need to calculate what is the velocity and what is the acceleration of this pulley. Okay, because here the pulley is also moving, so what you do is you need to find the velocities of these two, because all these are constrained motions, and how are they constrained? The lengths of the strings are fixed. Okay, so when you do a proper analysis, what you find is my velocity of this pulley is equal to the average of the velocities of these two blocks that are going down. Similarly, the acceleration of the pulley is nothing but the average of the accelerations of v1 and v2. You guys should make a note of this, because sometimes they ask a direct question wherein if you go through the entire analysis, it will take you around 5 minutes or around 4 minutes if you've not done that before. But if you know this already, then you can probably do the question in less than 30 seconds. Let's look at another system. Drawing the free body diagram for this is also not a big deal. I have my MB greater than MA sine theta. This has been given to you. Okay. So what is my free body diagram for A? I'll make my FBD for A as there is a contact force here. There is a contact force here. So there is a tension T. There is a normal reaction M, and then there is gravity acting on it. So there is MAG. As we saw earlier, I can split it into two, along the incline and perpendicular to it. So this was MAG cos theta, this was MAG sine theta. Okay, now what you have is this body is equivalent to uh, A moving up the incline with, this is equivalent to A moving in this direction with an acceleration small a, and the net force acting on it is ma into A. Okay, uh, what else is there? You can easily make the free body diagram for B as well, because mass of B is greater. So what you'll have for B is there is only one contact. So you have a contact force, then you have weight of B, and it's going down with a force M into MB into A. Okay, now you can easily write the equations of motion for this as well, and these are not very hard to do. Okay, so with this in mind, we can look at one of the questions. M1 slides down the frictionless inclined plane, and you are supposed to find the accelerations of the block. Okay, so I'll reduce my size to. So what you will do in these questions, first of all, mark all the forces that you can, forces acting on different things, so that you can make a free body diagram very easily. So you can make a tension here as T. Similarly, there is a tension T. Okay, because of these two tensions, there is a net tension of 2T in the string, and that same 2T is being translated here because it's a inextensible string. Now M1 slides down the frictionless plane, so that implies my M2 will be going up. Let's say it's going up with an acceleration A2. Okay, and let M1 be going down with an acceleration A1. Okay, now I can make the free body diagram for all these. You can do it in your rough note, or you can do it in your mind by now. So what you have for M1 is, you have M1 G sine theta, which will be along this direction. Then you have minus T is equal to M1A. Okay, and for the block 2, I can write 2T minus M2G is equal to M2A2. Okay, these are the two things that you should keep in mind. And if you've done the analysis before, you will know something about the principle of virtual work. So by the principle of virtual work, we see that A1 is equal to 2 times A2. Okay, using these three equations, you can easily solve for A1 and A2 in the system. So now let's talk about one more type of force, which is the frictional force. I should mention that frictional force is a contact force, just like normal reaction or tension or spring force. So till now we were assuming that all the surfaces were smooth, but due to the deformation in the surfaces, what happens is there is a force that tries to oppose any relative motion between two surfaces in contact. Okay, what this means is, I can show you by a small example. Let's say I have two blocks that are kept on each other. I've made them separately, but A is kept on B. Okay, now if I try to pull my block to the right side, what is actually happening? It has a contact. This is the surface. Okay, and A is in contact with this surface of B. Now because there is some roughness on both the sides, on A and on B, what will happen is my frictional force will try to oppose the relative motion between these two. So what happens is, my force of friction, let's say it's called known as small f, it works so that my A does not move to the right side, and secondly, it works so that if the A is moving to the right side, my B is also taken along with it. Okay, there are two things. First of all, stopping the motion of A, and secondly, assisting the motion of B. Okay, so what this means is, uh, on my B there will be a force acting to the right side, and on the block A there will be a force acting on the left side. Now there are two kinds of frictional forces. There is something known as the static frictional force, and then there is something known as the kinetic frictional force. Note that maximum static force is greater than the kinetic friction. What this means is, when you're trying to start the motion, at that time you will get the static frictional force, and when you are already in motion, then you will be experiencing the kinetic frictional force. And how does this work? The static frictional force will try to balance whatever force you are trying to apply if it's till a limit. For example, uh, if my static frictional force maximum, okay, is equal to 7 Newton, so that means the two surfaces that are in contact can only afford to apply 7 Newtons worth of force to stop the motion between the bodies. Now if I apply, if my same thing is there, I have two blocks A and B. If I apply around 3 Newton here, so the frictional force will act, Fs, and it will just balance this out. It will not apply 7 Newtons, it will just apply 3 Newtons, enough to balance the force so that there is no net motion. If I apply, instead of 3 I apply 4 Newtons, then the frictional force will balance itself and apply 4 Newtons here. This will go on till you reach 7 Newtons. When you reach 7 Newtons, frictional force will apply its maximum value, which is 7 Newtons. Okay, till this point the static is acting, but and we can say that it restores itself, the friction restores itself. But right after 7 Newtons, if I go to 7.2 Newtons, then it is not able to apply any more force. Okay, so the body starts to move. Alright, this is the basic principle, and while in motion you have the kinetic frictional force that is acting on it. Note only 2 points that are there. First of all, frictional force will act along the surface, not normal to it. Okay, and secondly, it will sometimes assist the motion, for example during the rolling case down the incline, that we'll hear about next. Next, you should take a look at this diagram properly. Sometimes they ask you to find uh, an angle between your normal reaction and your frictional force, or known as the angle of contact. So this is also essential at times, but most of the times questions will be based on real problems, so you need not memorize anything. Let's look at a real problem. An insect crawls on the inner surface of a hemispherical bowl of radius r. If the coefficient of friction between an insect and bowl is mu, and the radius of the bowl is r, find the maximum height to which the insect can crawl up. So let's look at this question. First of all, just make the diagram of what is actually happening. Okay. So insect is trying to go up on the hemisphere, and you know that there is a force of gravity that will try to pull it downwards. Okay, but because it's crawling, there is a frictional force as well between its feet and uh, the walls of the hemisphere that is trying to oppose the motion of going down. Okay, so let me just make this really clear with a small diagram. This is the center. Let's say my insect is at this height. Okay, so I'll just draw some basic things. This is my radius r. This I'm doing to find the h, because that has been asked in the question. So this thing is r cos theta, where this is theta. Okay, Similarly here also I'll just draw it. But now in the first one I'll just draw the free body diagram of this insect. So what are the contact forces? Till now we were not considering the frictional force, but now because it's a rough bowl, so first of all the first contact force is the normal force because it is in contact with it, and the second contact force will be the frictional force. Now the direction of the frictional force will be to oppose the net motion, any external force that is applied to it. So the external force is my gravitational force, which is acting downwards, but it has a component along the incline mg sine theta, and there is a component perpendicular to it, which is mg cos theta. Okay. Similarly, to oppose this, I have a frictional force on it. Okay. So just balancing the forces here, I can see that n is equal to mg cos theta, whereas in the tangential direction we want uh, there to be no net force because we want the maximum height to be reached. So let FSM, frictional force, static maximum, is equal to mg sine theta, which says that tan theta is equal to mu, because FSM is equal to mu times n. Okay. Now we already know that h is equal to r minus r cos theta. That implies you will get h is equal to r into 1 minus 1 by root 1 plus mu square. Okay. Let's look at another question from friction. Please make a note that all these questions have either come in the papers before, so you should definitely pay heed to what is being done here, because similar questions are bound to come again and again. The basic principles are the same. So you are given three masses, MA, MB and MC, and the coefficients of friction between the surfaces that are there. The least horizontal force F to start motion of any part of the system has been asked by you, has been asked to you. Okay, so how do you approach this question? You need any part of the system to start moving. When will this happen? This will happen when one of the surfaces, the three surfaces in question here, 1, 2 and 3, if one of the surfaces is not able to provide enough frictional force to stop the relative motion. Okay, so our task will be to find the maximum frictional force that each of the surfaces can provide. So let's look at the first block, the A block number A. Okay, so if I just draw the FBD for this, like the minute version of the FBD, I will have some frictional force on the left side, which is being applied by the contact between A and B. Okay, and there is some normal reaction N1, and its weight is acting. Okay, so I can easily write for this. I'm just writing it for this. So my F1 max is equal to mu1 N1, and this is equal to mu1 into mg is equal to 90 newtons. Okay, so first of all I mentioned this. For the case of B, I'm not drawing the frictional forces again and again. I'm just trying to draw the normal reactions because that is all you need to find the forces. Note that if I did want to write the frictional forces, then for this system, for B system, what I'll have a frictional force F1 on the right that is applied by the block A on B. Okay, then what else do I have? I have the B has two contacts, one here and here. So there will be two normal reactions as well. So let this be a normal reaction here. This will be from the top, and Then there will be a frictional force, some F2 between B and C. Okay, but for this question we need not use that. We only need to find what F2 really is, magnitude. So F2 is nothing but mu times N2. N2 is whatever C is applying on B. So this is equal to 0.2 into 400 is equal to 80 Newton. Okay, is equal to 80 Newton. How did I find this? Basically, you use the use N1 is equal to W1 from here. Okay, so because weight of A is given, you can easily find N1. Then you substitute N1 here. Then you can easily find N2 and so on and so forth. For WB, I will have my WB as well. So you just have to make the free body diagrams carefully. For the C also, what I'll have is C is being pulled to the right side by F2. There is a F3 here, and there is N2 here. There is WC here, and there is some N3 from the ground. Now F3 is equal to mu3 into N3. This is mu2, this is mu1, which turns out to be 0.1 into 600, which is 60 Newton. So we see that the maximum frictional force that the third surface can apply is 60 Newton. So this will be the first one to move. So that is why as soon as my applied force exceeds 60 Newton, I'll be able to move this body. Now let's quickly revisit the last topic of this lecture, which is non-inertial frames of reference. A reference frame is non-inertial if it is an accelerated frame. So the two frames that are exempted from this are the frames that are at rest or the frames in uniform velocity. So what are some examples of such reference frames? Accelerating lift is a reference frame which is a non-inertial reference frame. Similarly, if your reference frame is a satellite orbiting around the Earth, then it's a non-inertial reference frame. So keeping this in mind, we introduce the concept of a pseudo force. And why is it necessary? I'll explain this through a very small example. Okay, so let's assume there is a lift in which you are sitting. Okay, I'll denote you by B, and there is a mass kept there. Similarly, I am sitting outside on the floor. Okay, and I am observing this mass. Now this lift is made up of glass, so I can see through, and this lift is going up with an acceleration A. Okay, so there are two frames of reference. One frame of reference is on the ground. This is the 0 of that 0, 0, 0, which is fixed to me. Similarly, there is a reference frame which is fixed to the lift, which is fixed to the body B. Okay, now this reference frame is accelerating. Okay, so with respect to the reference frame A, this other reference frame is accelerating. So this is the accelerating vector with respect to this. Okay, and this is my main body, my mass m. Okay, so with respect to my A, this is, let's say, acceleration with respect to A, and this is acceleration of B with respect to A. This is acceleration of M with respect to A, and this is the acceleration of M with respect to B. Now, even from the chapter on relative velocity and relative motion, we talked about that this situation can be written as acceleration of M with respect to the ground A is equal to acceleration of M with respect to the lift B minus acceleration of B with respect to A. Okay, so this is clear. Now this is the same principle that translates into the notion when we talk about pseudo forces. So let me just look at this, revisit this example again. You are going up in the lift and a mass is kept in front of you. Now you look at the mass and I am looking at the mass. For me, let me write the equations of motion of this mass. So I see that the mass is going up. So I can say that there will be a normal reaction on the mass. There will be a weight of the mass and the mass is going up. So there will be an acceleration. But when you write the equation of motion of this mass, you know that there is a weight and there is a normal reaction, but you don't see any acceleration of the mass because the mass is kept right in front of you. This is because your relative acceleration is 0, but for you in your frame the acceleration seems to be 0. Okay, and this violates the Newton's first law of motion, which says that all physical laws should apply similarly in all the reference frames. Okay, but there is a facet here. This is a non-inertial reference frame. So for a non-inertial reference frame, if you still want to apply the Newton's equations of motion, what you do is you add to your equation a pseudo force which is equal to negative of the mass into the acceleration of the frame. So how this works, if I just add it to the observation that the B has made, so I have mg minus ma, which gives me n minus mg is equal to ma, which is what I had reported from the ground frame. Okay, so this is the basic idea. If you're already in a reference frame that is non-inertial or accelerating, then you need to subtract a value which is equal to mass into the acceleration of the frame in order to get the correct equations of motion. So let's look at one question. A passenger on a large ship sailing in a quiet sea hangs a ball from the ceiling of her cabin by means of a long thread. Whenever the ship accelerates, she notes that the pendulum ball lags behind the point of suspension, and so the pendulum no longer hangs vertically. How large is the ship's acceleration when the pendulum starts at an angle of 5 degrees to the vertical? So I'll just make this situation using a simple diagram. So this is what she sees inside. Okay, but she cannot tell why is this happening, because according to her, the ball is right in front of her and there should be no acceleration on the body. Okay, and this is nothing but, if this is 5 degree, so is this. So I can have t split into t sine theta. Okay, and this will be t cos theta. Okay, now what we have done here is, because she didn't know the source of the force, what you do is, because you know that this is an accelerated frame, so you apply a pseudo force in the opposite direction and you write the equations of motion, which now become t sine 5 is equal to ma and t cos 5 is equal to mg, which gives you the acceleration of the ship is equal to g tan 5 0.86 meter per second. Note that many questions of this sort can come. One of the questions is a man in a lift where the lift is going up with an acceleration a, or lift is going down with an acceleration of a. Another type of question that has appeared previously is a variation of this pendulum question, in which there is a wedge over which there is a cart. Inside the cart there is a pendulum hanging. Okay, then you need to find the acceleration of the body. But this is a similar thing. Here you had an acceleration of a. In this case, you know that because of the incline there is an acceleration of mg sine theta of the frame itself. Okay, so this frame or this outer frame is moving with the acceleration of, sorry, not m but g sine theta. Okay, so you should keep this in mind whenever you're given an accelerated frame. You need to, when while writing the equations of motion for the system, you just subtract the you just add the pseudo force to the equation, which is equal to minus m times a of frame. To end this lecture, let's look at some previous year's questions that are standard, and you might be asked questions that are similar to this in the paper. So in the figure shown, the acceleration of A is given to you as a vector quantity, and the acceleration of B is, you need to find the acceleration of B. So let's just write what is given to us. My acceleration of A is equal to 15 I cap plus 15 j cap. Okay, now I'm going to mention something and you should make a note of it. Because of the constrained motion of the wedge, okay, there is a condition that acceleration of A in the perpendicular direction is equal to acceleration of B in the perpendicular direction, where perpendicular means perpendicular to the surface, so it's in the normal direction. Okay, this is the wedge constraint. Wedge constraint, and this will be useful in many of the problems that you might do in this chapter. So first of all, what you do is you need to make a proper free body diagram for this, for A. Even if you don't do that, this is your A, and I need to just make the angles properly. So let's move this. This is my center of A. This is my acceleration of A in the x direction. Okay, and this is my acceleration of A in the y direction. This has been given to me as 15 and 50. Okay, now I need to split them along the normal, and I need to see what components to write. So I'll make a clearer diagram showing you how this coordinate system is working. So this is my normal xy coordinate system. Okay, then what do I have? I'll show it with another pencil. So I can mark these directions. So this direction is that of the wedge. I'm assuming this is the wedge. So this direction is nothing but 37. This is 53. Similarly, I have a normal to the wedge. This is the wedge tangential direction. This is the normal to the wedge direction. Okay, and if I just write these angles, you can easily see that these angles are 37, 53, 37, 53, 37 and 53. Now you had your accelerations in the x and y directions, like you had accelerations like this, ax and ay. So now you need to find the accelerations in the components that are perpendicular to the wedge. So what are those components? I'll just write them down using another pen. So I'll make this again. I have an AY sine 53. I have a AY cos 53. Okay. In the same direction, I have a AX sine 53, and in the opposite direction, I have AX cos 53. Okay, this is for the block itself. That implies AAX cos 53 minus AAY cos 37 is equal to AB cos 53. Note why I have written this, because my wedge B can only move in the horizontal direction. Okay, so AB turns out to be minus 5 meter per second, or AB is equal to minus 5 I cap. Okay, this is done. Let's look at another question. Two blocks A and B of masses small m and m and 2m respectively are held at rest such that the spring is in natural length. Find out the acceleration of both the blocks just after the release. So in order to do that, let me just make the free body diagrams of both the blocks. So for A, I have my mass and there is mg acting downwards. Okay, it's supposed to go down with the acceleration, some acceleration ma. And then for B, I have a mass, I have 2 mg downwards, I have a tension upwards. Okay, and let me mark the tension on the first one as, let's say, T prime, and mark it on the spring as well. Or it's better if I draw the spring in a bigger picture. This is my pulley, this is my spring, this is my block, another string and block. Okay, this is M, this is 2M. Now this is the tension force T, same tension force is T here, but note that after the spring the tension will be something different. Let's say T prime. Okay, T prime. So I have written this should be equal to mg minus T prime is equal to ma. Okay, and here it should be equal to 2mg minus T is equal to 2ma. Irrespective of the direction, I have mentioned the direction as 2ma here. If the direction turns out to be different, then we just have to invert the sign. So we get two equations from here. Now what you should know is, as soon as you cut the spring, now the spring is cut. As soon as the spring is cut, this force that the spring was exerting, frictional, the spring force goes to zero. As soon as the spring force goes to zero, look here, there was a spring force acting. Okay, and it was interacting with this tension T and this tension T prime. As soon as F goes to zero, so does T and so does T prime. As soon as these go to zero, what do you get? You get G is equal to A, and here this was A1, A2. Okay, and you get A2 is equal to G again. So your answer is both of them go down with the same acceleration. Let's look at a final question from this chapter. A bead of mass small m is located on a parabolic wire with its axis vertical and vertex directed towards downward as in the figure. And they have given you an equation x square is equal to ay. Okay. Now, if the coefficient of friction is mu, the highest distance above the x-axis at which the particle will be in equilibrium. So if the particle is in equilibrium, the net forces on it are zero. So how do you approach this question? First of all, let's just make the free body diagram of this particle at the highest position. Okay, so what are forces are acting on it? There is the non-contact force mg. Okay, and then there is a frictional force on it. So frictional force will be along the tangent. I have mg sine theta, I have mg cos theta, and there will be a normal reaction as well. Now we want mu mg cos theta to be greater than or equal to mg sin theta, or mu is greater than equal to tan theta. That is highest distance happens when mu is equal to tan theta. Okay, now it's given ay is equal to x square, so you can easily find what tan theta is. How do you do that? You take the derivative with respect to x on both the sides. That implies a into dy by dx is equal to 2x, or dy by dx is equal to tan theta is equal to 2x by a. Okay, now x square is given to be ay. That implies x is equal to root of ay. Okay, that implies mu is equal to 2 root ay divided by a, or mu square is equal to 4y divided by mu square is equal to 4y divided by a. This gives you your y is equal to mu square a divided by 4. This is your final answer.